How to fill out financial forms in a divorce. This is one of the hardest things for people, particularly trying to break down whether it's there. You have to list your income, your assets, your expenses, and your liabilities. And in a way, that sounds easy, but for a lot of people, it's hard to actually break everything down. You start, and there's a short form and a long form depending on how much money you make. But essentially, the first part of the divorce financial statement is your income. And for some people, it's more straightforward. If they're a regular W-2 employee and they get a regular salary week to week, you can simply use your paycheck, put down what your income is, take out your withholdings and how many withholdings, whether that's for taxes, and then if you have other withholdings for health insurance or for unions or things of that nature. Where it can be a little bit more complicated is if you either work for yourself, which you'd have to file another form as well, or if you get bonuses or overtimes and how you would determine what that may be. One of the ways that you can look at is if it's fairly consistent, you can look at the year to date and divide that by the amount of weeks, and look at what that may be. You can also all the time put asterisks or footnotes explaining why your bonuses or your overtime or other parts of your income might be higher or lower than it might be in a different year. You also would then be listing your expenses as the second piece of it. And again, some of the expenses are more straightforward. If you rent, you would divide. The courts want it to be divided by weeks. So if you rent, you divide by 4.3. If you have a mortgage, you divide that by 4.3. Some of the other ones, whether it's food or clothing, can be more of a guesstimate. The more details that you have, the better, but it doesn't have to be broken down exactly. But if you look at what you spend for clothing, it might be hard to break that down weekly, but you might be able to say, gee, I spend $300 a year, or $500 a year, or $1,000 a year, or whatever it may be, and divide that by 52. It's important not to list things twice, so that if you have health insurance taken out as withholdings, you don't also list that as your expenses. And you can also add different expenses that are not listed in the financial statement form, whether that's internet or cable or gifts or vacations or just miscellaneous expenses. Another thing that you would be looking at would be your assets, and that can be anything from your home. And if you have an appraisal for your home, or you have a fair market value of that, some of it's a little bit of a guesstimate, particularly when you're filling it out to begin with, but then you would list what your mortgage is, or if you have a second mortgage or equity line of credit, and make sure that that's listed. You list any cars that you have and what you think the fair market value, which is what the car is worth, versus what you might owe on the car. And then you come up and figure out what that value is. So if the car is worth $20,000, but you owe $18,000, you'd be listing that as $2,000. A big question that a lot of people have is the value of a life insurance. Most life insurance is term life insurance and does not have a cash value. However, if you have a whole life insurance, it would have a cash value. You need to list bank accounts, you need to list stocks, if any. And what's important is, even if you're listing collectibles or what have you, if there's zero, you need to list the zero for the court. The other aspect that you'd be listing would be debt, and that can be credit card debt, and you can list what the credit card debt is, if it's a Visa or MasterCard, if it's ongoing, what the balance is, and what you pay weekly. Again, you'd be dividing it by 4.3. You can list personal loans and a variety of other liabilities that you have. In many ways, your financial statement's the most important, and you need to really look at your spouse's financial forms as well to make sure it's accurate, because the courts rely on that dramatically.